Hello and welcome to another photo editing tutorial on this channel, and this one might be my most advanced editing tutorial I put out on YouTube yet. So if you're just a beginner in Photoshop, I'd suggest watch some of my other tutorials first, which are not going into the depth I go with this tutorial. This here is more tailored toward the intermediate to advanced Photoshop user already. And what I want to show you here is how I blend this photo here. So we have three layers, which we see here on the right side. So we have here a stars layer, and let me zoom in. I want to show you. This was shot at ISO 6400. And yeah, I think Lightroom did a great job with its AI noise reduction here. So this is a twilight shot, ISO 6400 f2.8 at 15 millimeters, and I took it roughly 45 minutes before sunrise. So we already have this nice glow. We have a beautiful array of stars here, but also still a bit of noise. Then a little later, I took this photo here. This I'd consider my main sky photo. It was taken, I think, at ISO 400. So it also already shows much less noise. We have some trailing stars here. It was 30-second exposure. And I really love the sky here. But if we look here at the foreground, it's not 100% sharp. So what I needed to do here, in addition to those two photos, I needed to do some focus stacking, which is why I waited until it got a little bit brighter and took another set of photos, which is this one here. And this is already stacked. So I took three photos focused here on this area and on this area and to the background, and I used Helicon focus to do the stacking. On its own already looks nice, but I want to combine everything into a twilight scene. There are videos where I show how to do the Helicon focus stacking, so you can watch those if you're interested in that. But here we really want to go in how to create a convincing night or twilight night scene. Because those photos in terms of exposure, if we look at this one here, they're quite different. So here we have more this moody night feel, and this here is already close to sunrise. Also what you see here, I shot this one at 20 millimeters. When I capture the stars, I'm always at 15 millimeters because that's where my lens is the sharpest for the stars. It's also how I can capture more stars. So in addition to blending those photos, I also do kind of a focal length blend. Okay, enough talk here. Let's first blend the stars layer and the sky layer. And before I do that, we first need to clean up this sky layer because, as I said here, there are a few trailing stars. So the first technique I want to show you now is how to get rid of those with a simple filter. So let me just duplicate this layer, then go to Filter, Noise, Dust and Scratches. And this filter is perfect to remove such stuff. So let's first bring down the threshold to 0. And now we increase the radius until those trailing stars are gone. So it seems I have to go to like 17. Also, it seems this one here was really the biggest one. I might even retouch this one on its own. So let's see if I can go with a little less. Yeah, maybe I need 16. And then also what we can do, let's go again up here where we saw this star trail. We can bring up the threshold a bit, which brings back some of the detail. But also for this sky, it's a long exposure, so I don't really need any details. So it looks perfectly fine. So before and after, so down here, I might just want to mask it out. So let's just press OK. Now, holding down Alt and clicking on this mask icon, I put a black mask on the sky here. And now I zoom out. As those stars are mostly in the upper part, with a 100% white brush, I'll just paint over those areas to remove them. Then I go with 50% down here in the middle area where there aren't that many stars. And this way I get a quite convincing result. So let's zoom in, and yeah, down here I need to remove those. And with it, I think I'm done. So this was the first step. So just cleaning up the trailing stars in this exposure. So I flatten it down, hold down Control and press E. And now I want to merge this stars layer. But before I do so, let's first get rid of a bit more of the noise and also make those stars glow a little bit more, because you see there was some atmosphere in the air. And there's already a nice glow around those stars. And we can enhance it while at the same time removing the noise. Let's duplicate this layer, and I now want to set here the copy to the lighten blend mode. Now I will select the underlying layer and go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur, and What I can now do, let's bring this to 0. I now blur the underlying layer, which gets rid of most of the noise. It also blurs the stars on that layer, so creating a glow. But because I have this layer on top in lighten mode, I preserve the stars. So I create a glow around those stars. I remove the noise, but I also keep the detail on the stars. So it's a little complicated to just tell you. Let me show you. So this is now how the blurred layer looks. And if I put this stars layer, make it active again in lighten mode, here we have again the detailed stars, but they have a little glow around them. So this looks pretty nice for this twilight shot. And also, as I said, we got rid of some of the noise. Let's flatten this down. And now it's time to merge those two layers. So I just want the stars up here on the top, and down here, this area, I want to have mostly the beautiful clouds from this layer. So let's zoom in. Those were both shot at 15 millimeters. I can easily blend those. So let me just put a black mask, again holding down Alt, on the stars layer. So there are different ways to blend those. So let me duplicate it and use both. First of all, this one, I set this to lighten mode. Lighten mode will just reveal the brighter areas from this layer. But I also use this one as a normal mode. So first, let's just use a gradient, white to black, and draw in here from the top. And this already reveals the stars, brings them in nicely. And now I can also use a brush and paint in some of the sky. I can also do in some areas down here. I can use this brighten layer to reveal a bit of that, but here it doesn't look nice. So this is really manual masking here, and I can switch between the normal and the brighten layer or lighten layer to figure out what works best here. So just this star, I want to have it. And then, we can continue to draw with like 20%. Just make this blend a little more convincing, and also use a black brush and also remove a bit. Here I want more of those clouds. And then I can also see if I want to use some of this layer. So for me, it's usually a combination of a normal layer, normal blend mode, which I blend in, and a lighten layer, which I blend in. So alternating between the two and just manually painting in the masks. By the way, I hold down Shift and click on the mask to deactivate the mask. This way I can see areas which I might want to paint in. Maybe here a bit. So something like this. And also I already did this. I already have the final image, which I showed you in the beginning. So I might do it a little faster now. So sometimes when I work on those blends, I really go into the details. Here for the sake of this tutorial, I will go a bit faster. So let's say this the before and this the after. Now we have a very nice blend between the two. We have stars up here on the top and beautiful clouds down here. So now I want to merge this down, and this brings us to the most important and also often the most difficult part, because blending those two images in a convincing way is not that easy because the light has shifted drastically between the two. So the first thing I want to do this year, this will be the main layer here for all the dunes and the foreground, and I'll first create a selection for the sky here. And also I want to make the crop a little bigger. So let's just increase it a little upward, so we have a bit more space for the sky. Now I start by selecting the sky here. Let's see what Photoshop does. It's seldom perfect, but usually provides a good start. Now I click on the mask icon, and now we have our first selection for the sky. We want to invert it. Let's alt click on the mask so we see the mask, and here you see the imperfections. We can now use some dodge and burn to refine the mask. So I will now first use the burn tool and use it here on the darker areas in the sky, and I set the range to focus on the shadows, so areas that are already pretty dark. And this way I can make this edge here along the horizon more defined, make sure that the sky is fully selected. Then I switch to the dodge tool and I want to brighten the highlights, and now I make sure that the foreground is fully white. And this way we can significantly improve the mask here, because we want to really have a hard mask between sky and foreground. So let's go with something like this. Let's clean this up, zoom out again, and once more use the burn tool. So often helps to switch between the two a few times. And then also black brush, 100%, fill in the top area here to give us the selection. Now what we can also do is, first of all, let's activate this layer and bring it to the bottom. And now you already see a bit of the problems we'll have later with the blend, but first we will refine this mask even further. So we go to the mask, so just click on it and then go to select and mask, which allows us to refine the mask. What we want to do, we want to shift the edge. I always have to check in which direction because I never know if I have to shift to left. Okay, so we shifted a little bit to the left, which pushes the selection downward. Then we want to have a little bit of feather, so not using a hard edge, maybe 0.4. And then we can also go along the edge and check if it's really perfect. And it looks very good. So we press OK. And now that's our basic merge, which doesn't look good yet. So now we select the stars layer and we bring it upward. And now with the arrow keys, we bring it down as far as required. So the horizon from the night photo is just beneath the horizon of our foreground photo. So just a bit more, something like this. And here, this mountain, I will just retouch. So let's just put a layer in here. We use simply the clone stamp and we go with like 100%, or let's go 40 and build this up. So we go over this mountain a few times so that it's hidden. Something like that. And now let's activate the foreground again. Okay, still a bit more. Yeah, now I think it looks good. So this is our blend, but it's not finished obviously, because now you see here the background, it's much too bright. It doesn't look convincing. It's just the first step. Now comes the most important part. First of all, we want to crop it so it does not contain the transparent pixels. And this technique is now the most important part. And it's something I haven't yet shown in any of my shorter form videos. To blend such images together, what you need to do is you use a curves layer, alt-click between the curves and the foreground layer, so snap those together. So when I now work on the curves, it will just affect the foreground. And what you need to do is first make the foreground very dark as it would look in a night photo, something like this. And you can also compare it to your stars photo. So this is really, really dark. And now you see here in the background, and that's the important thing, it will look convincing in the blend. What you could also do, if you need to darken certain areas even a bit more, use another curves layer, again snap it, make it even darker. Here you invert the mask and just with a white brush and like 40% darken some of those dunes, mountains, whatever you have in the background that are close to the horizon, because there you usually don't have or don't see that much detail. So those need to be dark enough for a convincing blend. Something like that. Also here, make this a little darker, this a little darker. And now the interesting part. Now we use a black brush with like 10%, and now we do the revealing process. We can now reveal areas in the image where we want to have the viewer focus. So basically leading the viewer through this image. And I can make this foreground a touch brighter, but not too much. So it should still look like a twilight scene. And also this area is still too bright. So I use this second curves layer and make this darker because it's too dominant. There's not that much light. So we already have a bright area here. So it works that this dune will get light, but still it should look like a twilight scene. So to get a convincing result, we now start with really like 5 to 10% in the black brush on this darkening layer to reveal some of the areas. And we go very slowly to end up with a convincing result. So this already looks much better than this blend, and we achieved it by making it darker. Now to bring everything even closer together, we add another curves layer. This one will not be snapped to the foreground layer. Here we want to have it affect the complete image. We can make it even darker to give this image even more of a nighttime look. And now again, first make it darker, and then I start with like 10% to reveal details in some of the areas. And I find that this is the most natural way to work on night images to get convincing results. So don't go for a super bright image with all the details. First bring over as many details as you can from Lightroom, and this will likely be too bright, but then immediately use curves to darken everything. And then you work the inverse way and bringing back a hint of details in different areas of the image and use those details to guide the viewer. And this is how you create a convincing blend. Now, I'll stop here with this part, but what I want to show you is a final step which works very well for such nighttime desert images or images where you have soft details. You want to clean it up a bit more because here you see there are some patches which we want to remove, which are distracting. So what I will now do is hold Ctrl-Shift-Alt-E to create a flattened copy. And now we want to zoom in and I want to show you what I want to clean up. You see all those areas here for such a night image. This needs to be cleaned up. So the first and obvious step is just to use here the spot healing brush and go over the areas that need cleanup. So really quickly also remove those here because this just looks messy. And here I usually spend quite some time. You can also use the healing brush tool. And it's always good to draw in the direction of the natural flow of some of the areas you want to clean up, in this case the dunes. And also here that's very patchy, so I have to do a lot of work. And what you'll notice is it's still very patchy even after I use the healing brush. And also down here, this patchiness, it doesn't look good. And let's just say I now spend another 10 minutes clean this up, which I'll not do because the tutorial would get too long. How can we remove this patchiness? And for it, let's just flatten this down. I create two copies and use frequency separation. So let's first hide this upper copy. This one here we're now gonna blur. I go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur, and I'll blur it as much as I need, but I still want to see this patchiness in this layer. So if I blur too much, then the details, the patches are already gone. So I still want to see this, what you see here, this little patchiness, this unevenness, which you'll have especially for such photos where you have very dark tones with not too many separations between the gradients. So something like this, so just going with like 6 to 10 will be okay. So I press OK. Now I go to the upper layer. I go to Image, Apply Image, and those settings I now use are for 16-bit images. When you want to do frequency separation, I've done this or shown this a couple of times in previous images. So I select the layer 3 copy, which is the one I just applied the blur on. I go to Invert, I go to Add, Scaling needs to be 2, opacity 100%, press OK, and now I have to go to Linear Light. Now if we see before and after, it should look exactly the same. So the combination of those frequency separate layers with those blend modes gives me the exact same result as before. But now what we want to do, we want to remove those patches. So I deactivate this detail layer. I yet again duplicate this layer here. And now I go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur, and now I blur it as much as I need to remove those patches. So I might go with like, 26, press OK. Holding down Alt, I create a black mask. Now I bring back here our detail layer. And what I now do with a white brush, painting on this blurred layer, let's use 30%, I remove the patchiness. And you see, this is magic. This really makes this area very smooth, and since it's very dark, I'm not sure how it appears in the video you're now watching. So certainly should watch this video in a dark room. This also helps sometimes when you work on night images, so getting your room pretty dark. But in the end, you should also make sure to view it in a normally lit room, because this is how most people will later look at your photos. But yeah, this is how you can really smoothen up those areas and yeah, create a beautiful looking, in this case, desert. But might also work for some other areas, but I find especially for such desert areas where you have a very patchy foreground sometimes because of a lot of stuff lying around still. Yeah, this technique is like magic. Okay, I think I'm gonna stop it here because this is already dragging on quite a bit, and those were a lot of techniques I now showed you. So yeah, let me know if you learned something, because as I said, this is one of my more advanced tutorials, and I really hope that I was able to show you some new ways to blend such images. I think the result is quite good. I also show you another image now where I used similar technique. For this image, I have a complete start to finish tutorial, like 90 minutes, where I show every step, so not just the quick blending, but everything, including image averaging to remove noise and different techniques I use on top of just creating this blend. So if you're interested in that, I'll leave a link to that in the description. Yeah, but for now, hope you liked this video. If so, leave a thumbs up, and yeah, see you in the next one. Bye.